The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. I'm Ben Wortham with Catholic Charities USA, and I'm joined by Lorraine Bell, also from Catholic Charities USA. Today's webinar is a collaboration between Catholic Charities USA and Catholics for Family Peace. And before we get started here, I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping slides. Next, please. All right, so this webinar is being recorded. The webinar is going to be made available on the members portal on the CCUSA website, but for everybody who either registered for this webinar or who is here and didn't show or who is here right now, there's going to be a recording and slides that is going to be sent from the GoToWebinar system that will be coming to your emails in the next couple days following this webinar. Your phone lines and computer and the mics are muted. And to make things easy today, if you have questions throughout the presentation, use that question and answer box, the question box on the right side of your screen, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the webinar. And go to the next. Oop. So just real quick, I know a lot of you know this already, but if this is your first time, we are offering one continuing education credit today for licensed social workers and counselors. And so in that email we just talked about, that for everybody's going to have the recording and slides. That for all of you who are here today, there'll also be a SurveyMonkey link in that email. And in order to get the continuing education credit, you just click into the SurveyMonkey link, and then there's just a quick evaluation and a 10-question little post test. You submit that, and then within 10 days from today, we'll send you all your continuing education certificates. And just one side note that just in the past that's happened, and I apologize for this, we've had people who have called in on their phone, and we can't give a continuing education credit out if you're calling in on your phone because the system doesn't register that you've attended. So I apologize for that. And we'll go to the next. And I'll go over the continuing education credits one more time at the end of the webinar. And so this is a series that has been put on, and the series is titled Best Practices to Support Families Impacted by Intimate Partner Violence. And like I said a little earlier, this is a collaboration between CCUSA and Catholics for Family Peace. This is actually the fourth webinar in a 4-part series that we've done. And today's webinar is titled How to Help Survivors Assess Their Risk of Death Lethality Assessment. And just one thing real quick before I hand it over to Sharon. I put in the chat box on the right side. There's a chat box. In that chat box is a SurveyMonkey link that is actually for a domestic violence services survey we're doing. We've put this out the last couple webinars, but if you wouldn't mind, if your agency hasn't filled it out yet, it takes, I think, 2 minutes and just gives us a little overview of the domestic violence services that your agency offers. And last quick thing, this is the last webinar ever on the GoToWebinar system. We're switching to Zoom, so the invites are going to look a little bit different here from now on, but just know you are on the last webinar in the history of the GoToWebinar system for Catholic Charities USA. And so I'm going to hand it over to the Director of Catholics for Family Peace, Sharon O'Brien. So thank you.
And thanks, Ben. It's so good to be with you and Lorraine from Catholic Charities USA. Catholics for Family Peace, which is a lay ministry with the intention of helping dioceses across the country create a coordinated compassionate response to domestic abuse, is delighted to be part of this collaborative effort. And indeed, today we have one of our own Catholic Charities, a diocesan response on this very issue of how to help survivors assess their risk of death. We purposely made this the last in our 4-part series because how very sad it is that intimate partner violence does indeed end in death sometimes. As on average, three people this very day will die because of intimate partner violence. And so we as a group of professionals, people who care, have an opportunity to make a difference. So I want to say a quick prayer, and then I will introduce our speaker. But certainly in terms of praying, to think that, you know, kids are going to be orphaned today. Kids, you know, somebody is either going to die of suicide or be imprisoned. I mean, it's not a pretty picture. So let's ask the Holy Spirit to place on our heart, what is it we can do? You know, what's one thing we can do based on the remarks that we're going to hear? So Holy Spirit will say, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. And we will thank the Holy Spirit for bringing us our speaker. The Holy Spirit has blessed this entire field with many good gifts. And one of them is Laura Yeomans, is the program manager in the Parish Partners program in the Catholic Charities of DC, which is one of the number of Catholic charities across the country. It is so exciting that Laura has this extensive domestic violence response background. She's been the director of a shelter. She has experience on hotlines. She's done that 40-hour training. She's run DC's program for a good, it's like 6 or 7 years now. So I won't spoil it because she's likely to explain some of the things that they do. But we are absolutely thrilled to have Laura Yeomans, the program manager of the Parish Partners program, with us to help us walk through this important issue of how to help survivors assess their risk of death. Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for your kind introduction. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be here with you today. I want to thank Ben and Lorraine and Catholic Charities USA for a number of times where you've supported domestic violence outreach. And special thanks to Dr. Sharon O'Brien and everyone at Catholics for Family Peace, because we in DC have learned so much from your efforts. So thank you so much. So I want to thank all the participants who've chosen to come to this webinar, because you've chosen to try to enhance the actions that you take to help survivors of domestic violence, because together we can make a difference. Our actions and our words can help save lives. We together can increase safety outcomes for our clients. So that is a major goal for us today. I'm going to talk with you about survivors and the abusive power and control situation that they exist in, and within that, how we can recognize some of the warning signs that a domestic violence murder might occur. I'm also going to talk with you about 2 lethality assessment tools and how we could use information about our concerns about lethality risks in talking with clients. And and then I'm also going to talk with you about a survivor risk assessment that I often see, the risk assessment concerns that they have, to see how they're balancing the information we're going to share with them. And then we're going to discuss appropriate steps that we can all take that are going to increase safety outcomes for our clients. I was going to introduce myself, but Sharon O'Brien did a great job, so I can mention a couple of things, especially our website, www.catholiccharitiesdc.org, Family Peace. We have many resources available there for you, including a guide for parishes on domestic violence outreach. But thank you for the introduction earlier, Sharon. Let me tell you just briefly about our Catholic Charities Domestic Violence Outreach Program led by Monsignor John Ensler. We have a priest advisory committee. They have set wonderful goals and been so supportive of us to do training of pastors, clergy, and lay people and staff. And they've urged us to create wonderful resources which are available. You could possibly use them with your clients. That's available on our website. We do ministry development and we do emergency assistance as well. We have a number of referrals that come to us from parish locations. All of the work that we do in the Catholic Charities Domestic Violence Outreach Program is based in the recommendations from the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. And I highly recommend to you that you could download When I Call for Help from the Bishop's website. And it is a wonderful calling. It reflects best practices. It calls the church and all of us to focus, when we learn of domestic violence situations, to focus on the safety for victims and children. That is the primary concern. And then there's a calling to first responders to listen and believe the victim's story, the survivor's story, and help assess the danger. And this point of help assess the danger to survivors and children is why we're doing this workshop today, to better enable you to do that part. I mentioned that we provide emergency assistance, and just so that you know, in the kinds of cases that my team works with involves families that are suffering high levels of physical violence. So these are threats of murder, people have been hospitalized, there are difficult situations related to suicide and threats of suicide, violence, spying, choking, and even violence towards pets. Now, we see that in our work at Catholic Charities, in our Parish Partners program, but nationally, you would be surprised at how many women, how many men have experienced severe physical violence in intimate relationships. And this means they've been burned by their intimate partner, choked, beaten up, kicked, or had a knife, a gun, or some other type of weapon used in a threatening manner against them. So if you think about just that statistic, 1 out of 4 women, think of all the clients that you see in one day. Think about when you go to Mass. If there are 1,000 families that come to Mass in your parish on the weekend, there might be 250 women who have suffered severe physical violence. Now, they may not all still be in that relationship, but some of them probably are. And that's why we need to educate our parish communities and learn more ourselves about recognizing those warning signs. There's a wonderful hotline here. If you don't already have it in your phone, I invite you to please take a note of it, take a picture of the screen, or write it down. You want to have a number. This number is recommended by the bishops, actually, and it will locate for you local domestic violence counseling services, shelters, emergency hotlines in your local areas. So no matter where you live, where you're working, that number will help you as a starting point of how to reach out and get help for families surviving domestic abuse. Now, nationally, what we see is that if you compare, there's so many women being killed, as Sharon mentioned, by domestic abuse. But if you look at, let's say, if you look at the period of the Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War, there were 58,000 soldiers, American soldiers, that died. During those years, 54,000 women, mothers, cousins, daughters, who were killed by their intimate partners. So it's clearly an emergency situation and where we can make a difference. As we seek to attend families that are experiencing violence, and we want to evaluate the warning signs, I want to talk for a minute about the pattern of abuse and control, the trauma that people who do experience lethal threats may be experiencing. And so I'd like to share with you a true story. This represents families in DC and Montgomery County who have told us this is what they're experiencing, what they have experienced. I'm going to refer to the woman in this story as Lisa, although that was not their names. So this is an excellent example. If you look at the screen, you can see the kinds of support that many families start with or have. But as a person encounters an abusive power and control in their home with their intimate partner, you're going to see just briefly what's going to happen to all of these supports that might exist. And for Lisa, she and her husband were professionals, and they had 2 children, and her husband did not want her to talk with friends. He became jealous and angry and accused her of cheating on him, and so she gave up talking with friends. He separated her from her family. He lied to her family about her, and when she sought help from them, they did not want to support her. He interfered with her ability to work. He beat her up so she'd be ashamed to go to work because of the visible bruises. He harassed her at work. He harassed her employers, and she gave up her employment. So you can see there's some isolation occurring here. He convinced her to pull out all of her retirement savings, and at the same time, he pulled out all of the savings in their joint account. She was without any money. There's oftentimes abuse associated with food and families experiencing domestic violence. And for Lisa, she was told she's fat and ugly, and that she had to ask his permission before eating or drinking anything. If he's out of the house, she has to text. She wants to heat up a cup of coffee. She has to text him and ask for permission, or she'll be beaten up. If there's any sign that she's consumed anything when he gets home. And she has no money to buy food for the family. She has to beg for that money, and she's beaten sometimes when she begs for money for the food. He takes away the pain medicine she has for her back, and she doesn't have health insurance, and she doesn't have money, and so she loses that. Her license expires, and this was at a time when you'd have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles to renew. He refuses to take her, and she stops driving. Every day coming home, he examines her cell phone. She really can't use it any longer. She's trying to avoid being beaten up. He checks if there's any internet use. Whoever calls her, he calls back and harasses them as to why they called. She stops using her cell phone. The children, the beloved children, he says he's taking them to the beach for one day, but in fact, he takes them away for 2 weeks and she doesn't know where they are. Coming back, he says, if you ever complain, if you ever go to the police, I will get custody of those children because and he insults her, and he's the only one working, and he says, I'll get custody of the children, you'll never see them again. And then he begins to put a piece of paper, he threatens her that she can't leave the house. She can't call friends or contact family or use her cell phone, and she can't leave the house. He puts a piece of paper on the door every day as he takes the children and shuts the door. And he says, if that piece of paper is not there when I get home, you'll be sorry. And sometimes the wind takes that piece of paper away, and he beats her up, and she's hospitalized, and she loses her freedom of movement. She loses her mental health. She loses her physical safety. And what's left? For women who've shared with me this story, the church was there. And for one family that I worked with, the church was there, understood what was happening, was ready with support, was ready with food and assistance with rental assistance and a support group to join. So we all have a choice. If we're Catholic Charities, we may be a point of entry. We may be the last access that women surviving domestic abuse and men surviving domestic abuse have to come and ask for help. So what we see here for women where there's high threat of violence is that there's often much that has already gone on. There's already been a lot of physical violence and sexual violence and intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation, blaming her for all of the violence, economic abuse, manipulation of the children. So we're talking about people who are traumatized, who are injured, and we know what trauma does to people. And so as we go forward and look at talking to people and identifying lethality risks, we need to be gentle with people, right? We need to be there for them and listening for them. And also, we need to be aware where they are in the cycle. When we talk with people about their lethality risks, I've found that it's not a one-time thing and you're done. They're going to be going, possibly, if they're staying with the abusive partner or returning, they're thinking about that, they're going to be going through a cycle. When the violence has just occurred, there may be a window. She may be saying, I'm afraid he's going to kill me the next time. And then we can talk with them about their lethality risks. As the honeymoon phase starts and he's saying, I'm sorry Forgive me, it'll never happen again. He's saying those things, but he's not actually taking any action, like going into counseling or working on a drug issue or any of the issues that have contributed to his being abusive, not taking responsibility for his action, but he's giving gifts and he's making promises. So there may be a window there. As the tension builds, there's another opening to talk with people about lethality risk. And unfortunately, as this cycle repeats itself, often the lethality risks becomes worse and worse. So there are two danger assessment tools that I recommend to you. And one is this marvelous work that's been done by Jacqueline Campbell at the School of Nursing at Johns Hopkins. They created a danger assessment based on interviews that they did with numerous family members where a family member was murdered in a domestic violence situation. So they asked questions. What had the victim done? What had he or she called? Who had she called? What had he or she said? And they developed an assessment, and I can't actually give you the assessment, but I can give you a link where you can go through the training. I have gone through this training at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. You can learn how to use this assessment. It starts with a calendar and inviting women and men suffering abuse to indicate the frequency and the severity of the abuse that they're experiencing. And then the assessment has 25 questions, and those have to do with family members and what has been said and what the threats are and what the harm has been. And so here you'll be receiving a set of slides for the presentation today. And so you can go there. If you're working with families that are suffering domestic abuse, this may be a tool that would be helpful to you, and you can learn more about it. Now, the Maryland Network Against Domestic Abuse, they created a lethality assessment program and a tool to use as well. And they had done some research, and they looked at the fact that nationally, only 4% of domestic violence murder victims had ever been connected to a domestic violence program, only 4%. So most of the women and men killed in interpartner domestic violence murders never contacted a program. We could make a difference there. We can make a difference. We can be sure that the women and men that we are working with who are suffering severe, almost any level of domestic violence, that they are connected with local domestic violence programs so they know that help is available. The Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence also saw that in many cases, when a murder had occurred, the police had already come to the home. So let that be a warning signal for us that we're talking to someone and they've already called the police to come to the home to save them from a possible murder, that can be an indication and a warning sign that they may themselves suffer if they return and if the violence increases. The research shows also that the network reports that when domestic violence survivors are connected to shelters and domestic violence programs, that there's a reduction in the violence that they experience. So their goal in doing their lethality assessment is to reduce homicides, to reduce serious injury, and to get survivors connected. And you can see the link here, and they have their own separate training program. So what I want to share with you, though, from their program is that they took the work that Jacqueline Campbell had done, and they identified just 11 questions. So I have for you, there are 11 questions. The police use this. First responders should go through training to use this skill, because this is only a part of the scoring system and how they would use the tool. But these 11 questions I have found really helpful for my team and for parish leaders and staff in being alert, being aware of what are key warning signs that the police are looking for that indicates that a domestic violence might occur. So the top 5 are warning signs They all have to do with whether or not there's a threat to kill her. And most importantly, you know, does she think he's going to kill her? If someone comes to your office and says, I'm afraid my husband's going to kill me, then you have your warning signal right there. We need to connect her to domestic violence counseling programs, safety planning. She may need a protection order. We need to take action with her. But of these 5 top questions, has he or she ever, has the abusive person ever used a weapon against the survivor or threatened with a weapon? Has the abusive person threatened to kill the adult or the children? So we have cases, we have a case from Montgomery County where the pastor called and said, I have a parishioner, her husband's in law enforcement, he has a gun, he's threatening to kill her and her children if she complains or if she leaves. So here we have someone with a weapon, he's threatened to use it, he's threatened to kill, he's threatened her and the children, and he knows how to have a gun and he has access to one. So those are all severe warning signs that she could be killed. Now the 5th one down, has he or she ever tried, has the abusive person ever tried to choke the survivor? So I have cases where we had we assisted a Catholic school teacher whose husband had committed a series of violent acts against her, and he had tried to strangle her. And she did not rate that as serious as some of his other violent actions. But the neck is very fragile. And I've seen this with other cases where people are not understanding that because the violence goes in a cycle and frequently worsens unless there's an interruption of the cycle with a protection order, with counseling, with someone taking responsibility for their actions, the next time that neck may be broken and she could be killed. So the top 5 are key. And then the bottom 6 add in the scoring system to the severity and the risks. So is the abusive person violently or constantly jealous or trying to control your client? So we have a person, you know, we have people who talk with us about these types of actions. We helped a woman who said that she'd suffered abuse for many years, and now he was getting in the car and following her to work. So he's jealous and constantly monitoring her, and he's lost the perspective that she's a human being, and more that she is an object that he's going to control. The next question is also very important, and has the client that you're talking with recently separated or thinking about separating from this violence? Because statistics show that in the months prior to a separation and the months during the separation and after are the times when the most domestic violence murders occur. So if she's thinking about leaving, the risk of increased violence is right there. And at Catholic Charities, we lost one of our own beloved staff members. We did not know that she was suffering domestic abuse. She took action to help herself and her children. She chose to separate herself from that violence. But as she moved out, her husband killed her and committed suicide. And so that period of separation, we need to be alert for that. Now, a couple others I want to mention here. Is anyone in the household talking about suicide? So this can affect people in very different ways. We had a deacon tell me that he had worked with a family suffering domestic abuse, and the young woman suffering the abuse killed herself. So, and we had a case in Prince George's County. A Monsignor called us to help a family where the husband was trying to convince the wife to commit suicide, saying to her over and over and over again, you're worthless, the world would be better without you, and describing awful things she was going to do with her body parts. So she was living in a terribly emotionally abusive and lethally threatening situation because he's talking about her killing herself. So we need to be alert to anyone in the household thinking about suicide. It could also be an abusive person saying, if you leave me, I will commit suicide. You know, I won't be able to live if you leave me. And so we need to be alert to that. And there are a couple of other warning signs here that add to the potential threat. Is he unemployed and therefore has nothing to do during the day, and that's why he's stalking you, and you know, a contributing factor to his spending more time harassing you and spying on you? Is there a child in the family that does not belong to the abusive partner? So this is an added factor that correlates with higher rates of violence. So what to do? What to do when you have one of these warning signs? You know, if you're interested in using this tool, again, I just invite you to connect with the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence and go through their training program for how to administer this actual test. But if you're talking with someone, they alert you to one of these factors: I'm afraid he's going to kill me, he's threatening, he held a weapon to me, then we want to take action. And the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence has an excellent training program at what they recommend that we do. You know, that we privately tell the person experiencing abuse that I'm concerned for your safety, that other women who've experienced similar situations have been killed. I hear you, we reflect back what they're saying. I hear you saying you're afraid that next time he's going to, you know, to break your neck. And we offer them the opportunity to call a domestic violence program together. Now, in my unit, my parish partnering unit, we respond to emergencies of many different kinds. So domestic violence is only one of the kinds of emergencies we're responding to. So I and my team, all of my staff, we call local domestic violence shelter programs when we're sitting with someone and there's a high lethality risk, because we want them to be connected to counseling programs that have a clinical focus in saving lives and are experts in domestic violence, you know, abuse prevention. So we can make it easier for a person to become a survivor that knows about domestic violence programs if we do it with her or him. It's much less stress for them if I make a three-way phone call and we together talk to the staff person at the counseling agency, and we introduce her or him, and they get started on safety planning. And then you'll learn more about what the local domestic violence programs offer, but you'll also be there supporting her, and you'll know about what some of the next steps will be. So that's actually response number 2 here, where the survivor chooses to do that with you, and you do it together. What if the survivor says no? And, you know, statistically, 50% of the time, you know, unfortunately, survivors will turn down this request. They will not do this. And so what are our response then? The Maryland Network urges us, you know, to review the danger, to affirm her concerns. I hear you saying that the next time he pulls out the kitchen knife, he's going to kill you. I'm concerned for you. And this program can help you. They do, and now, hopefully in your areas, we have domestic violence programs that do virtual counseling, online telehealth counseling, phone counseling. So it's actually easier right now in some of our best programs for people to immediately connect and even get services from their home. So you talk with a survivor who says, no, I don't want to make that call right now. You respect that. You review the danger with them and leave a number. Find some way for her to hide a number. Some people who are surviving abuse can put things in their phones. Some people can carry a piece of paper home. Other people may need to write something and hide it in their shoe, or give them a business card and add your number, but it's the domestic violence hotline number. So it looks like it's a number for you, if that would be a safer way for her to carry the number. And of course, as we are separating from a survivor after this kind of discussion, we want to be sure and check, how is it going to be safe for us to be in contact in the future? And I always encourage survivors who are living still in the abuse to take the initiative to call out, or to be real clear with us about when it's safe for us to initiate contact with them in order to offer support. So even if we recognize the abuse that signals of domestic violence may occur, and we have this initial discussion with them, we also want to be aware that each survivor has a complicated risk analysis process that they are going through. And so the lethality risk for themselves is one of their factors. But for many of the domestic violence survivors that I've been able to assist, either working in shelters or here at Catholic Charities or working in a church program that I ran that was funded by the Sisters of Charity, they have other safety risks that they're trying to figure out. For instance, safety for children is often the paramount concern. So if she's suffering a lethal threat of murder, she may also be in fear. He or she, the abusive partner, may have also said, and if you leave, I will kill the children. If you leave, I will get custody of those children. Or maybe they know, as I know, because I've been in court, that judges award unsupervised visits to the very most violent, abusive partners. I was in court. This man had kicked and beaten his wife until she was unconscious and had to be rushed to the hospital. And the judge said, unsupervised visits of that baby every weekend. Well, a woman may feel, she may choose to sacrifice herself. This is where I feel like I encounter the sacrificial Christ, the love the women have for themselves. They'll take so many steps to try to save their children and their extended family from harm. So one of the things we can do is we can ask a question. What step would you like to feel safer? And as I ask that kind of question with people and I listen, and then I hear them talking about, I have to figure out a way to keep my children safe. Or they'll say, all right, he's threatened to kill my people. He's threatened to kill my parents. Or in case of one person from Africa, if I leave, my family back in Africa will have to repay the bride price to his family back in Africa, and my family can't do that. And so they'll sacrifice themselves. However, we can be thinking with them about these safety issues. We can open a space for them to share the risk assessment that they're doing. We've provided information. I hear you saying that you're afraid he's going to kill you, and that this and this have happened, and that other women in that situation have been killed. And she's going to say, but if I, what's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my children? So they're never easy answers, but you can create a space for a woman to think, and you can look for solutions. Now, there are things here where we can make a difference. The specifics of how to escape. There are many women. In fact, we had a woman come to the parish door in DC, and she said, I'm living in all this abuse. I don't know how to escape. I can't use the phone. My husband tracks everything that I do. Please, could I come in? Could you give me information about who would help me if I try to escape? And of course, the parish actually offered to help her escape. And she said, no, I don't have all my children with me. I just need to know how to escape. So we can inform the people that we serve. We can be screening people for domestic violence. We can be in notifying everyone. Help is available should they know someone, that needs counseling, that needs a shelter, that needs a way to escape. And then as I sit with women and men who are facing abuse, facing a lethal threat, they're thinking, where am I going to live? How am I going to support my family? And I've heard people say, I didn't leave before because I didn't want my children to be homeless. So we need to do our research in the committee. If we're going to talk with people about lethality risks, we need to be able to offer them some referrals and to know where there is help available. And you may have special funds that can help with domestic violence in your community. You may have rental assistance programs. So we need to have information about that we can give people. Faith, and I'm looking at my time here. Faith can be a great source of strength for our clients. It can be a great barrier. And faith and community and family and identity. If the family says you're Catholic, divorce is a sin, you can never leave. And we had this happen with one of our staff people, with a different one, but a sister of one of our staff people was murdered, and her family had told her, as a good Catholic, you have to stay home and pray and obey. And there's such good information from the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. That's why I urge you to get a copy of that leaflet if you're working with Catholic survivors of domestic abuse, because they say that abuse, physical violence, is never justified. It is never justified. That leaving an abusive marriage does not violate the marriage vows. That God and the Bible do not require you to forgive and stay in abuse. Forgiveness does not mean you have to stay in the abuse. It's a beautiful document, but you and I can make a real difference. So one of the things we have to do is if you're going to do lethality assessments, you need to do, or find someone else who's done this, an assessment of where help is available in the community. Because we can do the lethality assessment, but her risk assessment is going to be, how am I going to get custody of my children? So where's legal help going to be? Where's that going to come from? She's going to need safety planning and counseling to handle all the trauma she's gone through. And to help her be, a traumatized person may have difficulty formulating plans, carrying out steps that they need to take care of themselves. So she's going to need counseling. And I think this is just a wonderful map that about the Erie County Sheriff had prepared, where they looked at all the services so they would be ready to make referrals. So one of the things that the lethality programs recommends in Maryland, there's 4 steps. You do a lethality assessment. You tell the woman about your concern. I'm afraid for your safety. I hear you saying that you're afraid he's going to kill you. Other women who've experienced, and name what she's experienced, other women who've experienced similar situation have been killed. And there's help available. Here are the resources. And in doing that, you are also, your goal is to educate her about risks, about support available, and then to empower her. And we can go back to that one question I asked at the end here. What step would you like to feel? What step would you like to take to feel safer? This process should be about empowering her to make her own decisions about what is best for herself and her family. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to offer you a case study. I'd like to just check in with Ben. Do I have a few more minutes before you need to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. Go. I mean, we have until 4 o'clock, so I mean, you just as much time as you need.
Okay, so dear friends who are participating in this, I'd like to ask for your chatting support. So get ready to chat. I'm going to share with you an example, a true case, and then I'm going to ask you to chat with us and give us suggestions about what you should do if this is someone that you are counseling, that you are trying to assist as we go through her scenario. And so then Ben or Lorraine, if you would be able to share with us maybe 3 or 4 suggestions from people as they chat in. So
Sure.
In this case, we have a young mother who reported that her husband, the father of her children, threatened to kill her with a knife. He has beaten her, kicked her in the head, and she reported that he raped her more, regularly, that she was experiencing being raped repeatedly. She had bruises we took a photo of the injury. This abusive father threatened to kill her family back home. He would have his family kill her family if she calls the police and he is deported. So she comes in, she's crying, she's traumatized. She doesn't want to file charges against him, but she's crying because she's afraid he's going to kill her. And then those darling little children are going to be without a mother. So if we can take a minute, and if you could tell me what's our response going to be? And Ben and Lorraine, are you receiving any responses?
Not yet, we're looking.
Oh, that's okay. So think. We know about lethality risk assessment. We know that if someone's threatened with a weapon, she's at a higher risk of being murdered, right? He's also beaten her, kicked her, raped her. She has physical bruises. He's threatening to kill her family. So now in that risk assessment process where she's weighing, how am I going to survive this? And my poor family back in El Salvador, she's at a loss as to what to do. And if you have any suggestions coming in, that would be wonderful.
Nope, don't have any yet. I think somebody's having problems finding where the chat is. It's right below the poll.
Okay, I'll go on and then I'll give you another chance to chat in, and then Lorraine and Ben.
I have one. Somebody wrote in the question. Ask her what steps you feel that you can take to be sure that you and your children are safe.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's wonderful.
That came from Catherine Herrera. Courtney Sanders says she can escape without calling the police. Make a plan with her to flee.
That's wonderful. You're right. That she might think that she has to report in order to get help to flee. But certainly she can leave, and we can help her leave without involving the police. Although there's some other steps. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, Leah Condon says find any strengths and provide resources.
Find any strength within her. That's a wonderful, and that comes from our trauma training, right? You commend her for taking care of those wonderful children in the midst of this difficult situation. Let me share with you a little bit more about what we did. At Catholic Charities, we reflected back to her, I hear your fear of being killed. And we talked with her about how women who face similar situations have suffered domestic violence murders. And we talked with her about the Family Crisis Center. And actually, I carry photos of buildings. And so in her community, I figured she would recognize the building where the offices were, and she did. So anything to make it easier for people to get to the referral. So we talked with her about where she could go for help if she wanted to escape, and how the House of Ruth provided legal help. And she didn't know about protection orders, and many people don't. And we discussed safety precautions with her, because sometimes people will tell me, I'm going home and I'm going to tell my husband that if he doesn't stop this, I'm leaving. And we advise people to be hesitant to talk about departure plans with a partner who's so abusive. That it's within that period where you start thinking about saving yourself and getting to safety, and afterwards that more violence may occur. And in her case, because he'd already pulled a knife on her and beaten her so severely, the next time might be her death. We also listened to her, and to your member who said, ask her what steps she wants to take. And she said, I have to figure out a plan to leave. I have to think about how am I going to get more income. And I listened to her thoughts about how she was going to increase her part-time job so she'd have enough hours. And where was she going to live? And you and I can create a space where in the midst of learning, of evaluating the danger, we create a space for her to process all the things that she's trying to figure out how to take care of that precious family of hers. Okay, so now I need your participation again. The mother reports that the 3-year-old asks why the father beats her. And the client said also, and I need food. He took my food stamp card. And she needs transportation if she's going to go anywhere, like to the local courthouse to get that protection order. So now what are we going to do? Send in your chat recommendations, please. Anything coming in, Ben and Lorraine?
No, not from since the last time. If you can't find the chat, you can just go ahead and put your questions in the answers in the Q&A box. Okay, one person says, this is Courtney Sanders. Find out his schedule and create a plan to get her to where she needs to go while he's out.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. If that's what she wants, right? Yes. But she, at this point, she had not decided. She's decided she's working on leaving, but she hasn't left yet. So yes, that timing of supporting her in leaving when it's safe for her to leave. All right, let's go on. So how we responded is that we heard her concern about her children, and we've done the resource map in the area. And so we know in many places, we know there's counseling available for children who are in a domestic violence situation. And in our in Prince George's County, Medicaid will pay for counseling for both the child and the parent if they have Medicaid and they are and suffering domestic abuse. We advised her about protection orders and how to obtain one. And my staff, we have emergency food cards, we have emergency Metro cards, because at the time when a woman is evaluating her lethality risk and maybe is going to leave, we need to be able to help her, or just for financial reasons, she may go back and experience that terrible violence. We also let her know that we do have access to emergency assistance for rent or security deposits if she moves out. And so then this young woman went to the House of Ruth and she got herself a lawyer and she got herself a protection order, and she was ordered custody of her children. And the man was arrested, and then his family asked her for funds to pay for his prison expenses. Okay, get that? He's in prison for hurting her severely, and now his family, local, is pressuring her to pay for his expenses. And at the same time, she asked us for help for rent and the electric bill because he's no longer working, he's in jail. And so, and I think I'm going to just proceed here. Are there any remarks coming in?
Yeah, just more comments. Someone said, make a plan to leave. The child may be a threat to the father since he's questioning him. Yes. That came from Viola Johnson Robinson. And then Courtney Sanders says, this is where she blocks all the numbers from his family.
Oh, okay, good recommendations. All right, so let's see what happens. So, you know, you could have said, okay, well, she's asking for money and Catholic Charities is going to give her money. She's going to use that to pay his prison expenses. But you know what? We didn't go there. We operate on a trust factor that we trust you as a woman suffering abuse to figure out what's best for your family. And you're asking for financial help, we're going to offer that to you. So then, do you remember I said that more than one time, and we're serving a client, we may need to talk with her about lethality risks, because in the cycle of abuse, she's going to be passing through different phases. So she began to move in the phase from violence to the abusive partner, the father, trying to enter the honeymoon phase. So she called us. She stated that her husband was calling her saying that he loved her, that this wouldn't happen again, and would she please pay his bail? Because he wanted to get out. He wanted to come back and take care of her, and that this terrible violence was not going to occur. And she asks me directly, what should I do? What should I do? He wants me to pay his bail and let him come back. Does anyone want to chime in? What is our answer at that point?
Any person responses, we'll see.
What should we do? When the client asks us to make a decision for her, we say back to her, I trust. Yeah.
Elizabeth Hudson says, only you know best. You are the expert on yourself and provide information about the cycle of violence.
Yeah.
Courtney Sanders says, first ask her what she wants to do. If she indicates that she wants to go back, then she should be gently reminded of the pattern of abuse, and she needs help processing her emotions and the reality of the situation.
Yes. Yes. This is just right. And so what we did is we encouraged her to make the decision herself. That I said to her, you have the wisdom within yourself to know what is best for your family. And then I did remind her of the statement she made herself. I reflected back to her from previous meetings with her. I know you've been concerned that the next time he would kill you with that kitchen knife. And I'm happy to report that this woman chose not to pay his bail. She chose to live by herself, and she's in a safer place. And we did provide additional assistance to her. And it's this kind of situation where you could actually save the life of a young woman. You can make a critical difference because we can offer information about the lethality risk. We can offer space for her to weigh the other risks that she's considering, the danger to her children, the danger to extended family. We can help her solve next steps. We can ask her, what step would you like to take to feel safer? And then we can have resources that we've done research. We know where to refer her to, and ultimately we're there to empower her, and we're there to support her. And I've worked with women who've chosen to go back. I'm still there to support you and affirm you. I'm still available should you come back to me, to be there to help you. And I'd like to, I know I need to close now, but I want to invite you again to come to the Catholic Charities DC wonderful website where we posted resources, a pastor's domestic violence resource packet. You can find the statement from the United States Conference of Bishops when I call for help, our restroom flyers. And I talk with Catholic Charities in different states, and sometimes they'll ask me, like Kentucky asked me, hello, if anyone's here from Kentucky. One of your staff asked if you could just borrow my material and put your names in it. I said, of course, take anything you can use, change what you need to change, and I'd be glad. I hope this website would be a resource for you as well. I also am delighted to talk with people. Here's my contact information. And of course, you could always get my information from Ben or when the slides come out. And again, at the bottom of the screen is the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, which will help all of us throughout the country in connecting our clients with domestic violence programs that do safety planning and counseling and emergency shelters. And with that, it's 4 o'clock. I'm turning it back over to Ben.
Okay, this is Lorraine. Thank you so much. I'm gonna, presentation was outstanding, Laura. Thank you so much. I'm gonna there's a few questions from earlier. I'm gonna just put them out there, Ben, if that's okay.
Yep.
And maybe we'll answer them quickly. So this is from Inez Nolan. What are the laws, if any, in the Washington, Maryland area regarding gun ownership by arrested abusers?
We're in a jurisdiction with 3 different jurisdictions, so I'm sorry. I don't know the difference between the jurisdictions, but nationally, we need to, I know that in Maryland that we've been advocating for that boyfriends, that we expand the number of people who can have their guns removed if there's a finding of domestic violence. So it's a very important question, and advocacy is needed at the state and national level.
Another question from Inez. Since domestic violence is a crime and based on the lethality risk, what is your opinion about recent opinions that domestic violence calls to the police could be handled by social workers?
That is a wonderful question. And often when I hear about requests to defund the police, I think, but what about domestic violence cases? I think that there are cases where social workers would certainly help. And I haven't done I don't know what the best practice recommendations would be. We'd have to look at what best practices would lead us to have a social worker come instead of the police. I have, personally been on the scene. I worked in a community where the police would call me to translate. I've been on the scene where, there's blood and violence, and I'm so thankful that the police are there. But that's just a wonderful question. I don't have the answer just yet.
Okay. We have lots of thank yous and wonderful presentation. Another question from Joanne Farrell. Are abusers provided any counseling while in prison, while they're in prison or incarcerated?
I believe the services are very limited. Obviously there are abuser programs for people who are abusive. And I thank you for the question, because one of the things that we have in our resource guide, and which hopefully you could also inquire about, is in Maryland does a certification program for counseling programs that are certified specially to care for abusive people. So if you're in a community and someone is being abusive and the pastor wants to get that person into counseling, we shouldn't be recommending people go just to our friendly Catholic counselor who we know and we like. But if there are certified programs that specialize in the manipulative and abusive behaviors of people who are violent with their spouses, we can encourage the referrals, that referrals are made to those special programs. Also, the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops, in their document, when I call for help, they have a very clear statement. We do not recommend marriage counseling together when a family is experiencing domestic abuse. The bishops recommend separate counseling. The woman or man surviving abuse goes into the domestic violence programs for counseling, and the person who's abusive goes to one of the certified abuser counseling programs. So that's a very helpful recommendation from the bishops, that it's separate counseling. And of course, at Catholic Charities, we care about and want both parties to be served, both parties to be counseled, so that both parties can heal. Whether or not that means they get back together or not is, a decision that they have to make.
And Lorraine, yeah. Lorraine, I don't know if it got into the chat, but there is, it's a new hotline, but there is a hotline for people who use abuse, which is the emerging term, as opposed to abuser or perpetrator. They are more than their negative behavior. But there is an abuser on the hotline, and I don't know if we've been able to put the number in the chat there, but it's 877-898-3411, 877-898-3411. And not only, it's open 10 to 10 Eastern time. So not only people who are who want to change their behavior, and we certainly hope there are people, and indeed there are any number of success stories. Let us not suggest that people cannot change this horrific behavior. They absolutely can. But not only can they call, but other people who are concerned about how to respond, they can also use it as a hotline. But we highly recommend the National Domestic Violence Hotline as well. Of course, there are wonderful people there. So just another resource.
Sharon, can you repeat that number again?
Yes, it's 1-877-898-3411.
Okay.
So.
Then there's one more question I think we have time for. And it says, has there been an uptick in domestic violence with males as victims? We are seeing a huge uptick in our region. I'm wondering if we're seeing that anyplace else, and specifically mostly male victims over the age of 65.
I don't have statistics that confirm that. However, our local metropolitan Jacada program, which is a clinically focused program for domestic violence abusers, it has experienced in the last year an uptick of 80% more calls into their hotlines during COVID. Mm-hmm. So there are numerous people, just so many families that are suffering at this time.
I think that's it for the questions. Just one more compliments for the presentation and the information, and wanted to make sure that we get the slides and the numbers out to everyone. So thank you again, Laura and Sharon. And then you can go from there.
Yep. Good. And then just down here we have my email address if you want to reach out. And then we also have Sharon, her email address. And these slides will be sent out again. And then I'll just go over this last slide real quick, Laura, if you would just go one more for all of you out there going after continuing education credits. Maybe we could just go, I could just talk about it real quick. I know it. So for those of you going after continuing education credits, there's going to be an automatic email sent out, and it's going to have the PDF slides, a YouTube link to the recording, and it's going to have a SurveyMonkey link. To get the continuing education credit, you just click into the SurveyMonkey link, you do the quick evaluation, quick 10-question post test, you submit it, and within 10 days from right now, you'll receive your continuing education credit. And apologies, we can't do the continuing education credits for those who logged in on your phone because the system can't track it. So I just want to say thanks so much, echo what Lorraine was saying to you, Laura. Thank you so much for that presentation. And to you, Sharon, who's been the mastermind behind the 4 presentations that we've had over the last 2 months. And lastly, you're a part of history today. This is the last minute of the last webinar on the GoToWebinar system for CCUSA. We're switching to Zoom, so the invites are going to look a little different, but we're ready for it and we're excited for the change. And just wanted to thank all of you for the participants today, and see everybody soon.
And Ben, before you cut it off,
yep.
I mean, you could quit the recording, but if the 4 of us could stay on for just a moment, if other people are leaving, that's fine. But, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so